Forbes once kicked Donald Trump off its billionaire list. And Trump, being Trump, didn't just brush it off. He sued them. Because when you've spent 4 decades building the persona of a gold-drenched billionaire mogul, you're not going to let a magazine tell the world you're worth less than you say. Nah, this isn't just a guy yelling absurdities at campaign rallies. This is a man with a Boeing 757 named Trump Force One, and the receipts to prove he lives like a king. And that plane is a flying monument to excess. Leather seats stitched with the Trump family crest, a private bedroom wrapped in silk, gold-plated everything, even the damn seatbelt buckles. But wait, helicopter? Of course. Trump's got a Sikorsky S-76, slathered in Trump branding. On the ground, he's rolled in everything from a Rolls-Royce Phantom to a Maybach. And back in the day, he flexed Lambos and Ferraris like they were parking lot accessories, like he was gearing up for a Mad Max reboot set in Mar-a-Lago. Speaking of Mar-a-Lago, yeah, that's just one jewel in the crown. But the real beast? Trump Tower. Sprawling over nearly 11,000 square feet and perched above Fifth Avenue, it's less of a penthouse and more of a personal palace. Every inch is designed to impress, or distract, maybe both. Gold trim, Greek columns, Louis XIV furniture, chandeliers that you so dearly want to kiss. But here's what most people don't understand. Trump is not just some luxury-chasing socialite. This dude built a family empire that works like a global corporation. Ivanka shaking hands at Davos, Don Jr. lurking in Eastern Europe, Eric making quiet golf course deals overseas. Every move, every photo, every handshake is part of a bigger blueprint. While people obsess over his tweets and trial headlines, the Trumps are locking in assets like it's a family sport. See, Trump's lifestyle isn't just rich guy theater, it's a smokescreen. A wall of gold hiding one of the most tightly held fortunes in American capitalism. To really decode what's really happening, you have to go back, way back, before the billion-dollar brand that turned everything he touched into a Trump-shaped marketing campaign. Let's rewind the clock to Queens, 1946. Donald Trump wasn't born into the American dream, he was born into its penthouse. His story started in Queens, not the gritty, working-class part. The upscale corner called Jamaica Estates. His father? Fred C. Trump, a real estate mogul who built an empire of middle-class housing. Fred wasn't your classic warm and fuzzy dad. He was cold, sharp, and all business. The man thought emotions were liabilities, and love wasn't warmth. It meant a roof over your head and a reminder that life doesn't care about your feelings. According to Donald's own niece, dinner time in the Trump home featured casual dehumanization, where empathy was weakness, money was everything, and apologies were for losers. Donald got the message loud and clear. If you wanted Fred's respect, you didn't whine. You won, you dominated, you crushed, and you never ever came second. No one in the family bore the weight of these expectations more than Freddie Trump, Donald's older brother and the original heir to the Trump empire. Poor guy made the mistake of being human. Sensitive, kind, wanted to be a pilot, not a landlord. That didn't sit well with Fred, who spent years mocking and dismantling his own son, ripping him apart piece by piece until Freddie caved under the pressure and spiraled into alcoholism. He died young. And Donald? He learned the lesson. Weakness gets buried. Ruthlessness gets rewarded. So he stepped into Freddie's shadow, not with grief, but with ambition. Still, to the outside world, they looked pretty normal. Meanwhile, Donald's mother, Mary Ann, was largely absent due to illness during his early years, which meant Fred's icy worldview wasn't balanced out by warmth at home. Emotionally abandoned as a kid, Donald developed a survival tactic: shut it all down. No feelings, no empathy, no cracks in the armor, just raw ego and a burning need to win at any cost. What you're seeing now isn't new. By age 13, Trump was already acting like a kingpin in training. He punched a neighbor's kid in the face and bullied his teachers like it was a contact sport. Fred's response was to send him to the New York Military Academy. not as punishment, but as prep. A way to channel the aggression into a winning edge. And it worked. Years later, Mary Trump revealed he allegedly paid someone to take his SATs for him. Because nothing says future president like outsourcing your intelligence. Actually, at the time, his grades weren't good enough for Wharton, and Trump wasn't about to settle. By the time Donald graduated and joined the family business in the late 60s, the transformation was complete. This wasn't just a young man with a silver spoon. This was a weaponized ego wrapped in a suit, primed with lessons in dominance and image control. He wanted power, respect, status, and he knew how to fake it until the world believed it. Fred had built houses. Donald wanted to build an empire. To do that, he had to leave Queens behind and aim for Manhattan, the city of lights, headlines, and billion-dollar illusions. The Trump name was on the verge of going national, but what triggered it was an unlikely strategy, a stunt so bizarre you won't expect that level of luxury. The rise of Donald. By the early 1980s, Donald Trump wasn't just developing buildings, he was creating a public identity. And he chose one of the world's most iconic stages to do it: Manhattan. If Queens had shaped him, Manhattan would showcase him. That was the plan. The centerpiece of this reinvention was Trump Tower, a 58-story structure on Fifth Avenue that opened in 1983. With its bronze glass facade, pink marble interiors, gold-toned finishes, and a 5-story indoor waterfall, it was a middle finger to subtlety. Even in a decade known for cocaine, shoulder pads, and Wall Street excess, Trump Tower was a bit much. And that was the point. Reporters called it gaudy, Trump called it success, and somewhere in between, a brand was born. The media didn't see a real estate developer. They saw a personality. Cameras were drawn to him, headlines followed, and he knew exactly how to keep their attention. Often appearing alongside him was Ivana Trump, his first wife, a former model from Czechoslovakia with a commanding presence and strong business instincts. Ivana wasn't just a supportive spouse. She was a central figure in the growing Trump empire. She was more than a housewife. She was running things. Ivana was named Vice President of Interior Design, President of the Trump Castle Casino, and later President of the Plaza Hotel. She wasn't just part of the empire. She helped build it. It was Ivana who brought the vision for Trump Tower's interior to life, choosing the gold finishes, the marble surfaces, and the Versailles-inspired detailing that would come to define its unmistakable style. Donald embraced every choice. Theirs was a shared appetite for grandeur, and together they quickly became one of New York's most talked-about couples. With their 3 children, Don Jr., Ivanka, and Eric, often appearing in public dressed like young heirs, the Trump family projected an image of modern-day royalty. Carefully curated and always camera-ready, they positioned themselves as a new kind of American aristocracy. But this wasn't just lifestyle, it was strategy. For Donald Trump, image was everything. In his eyes, perception created profit. The real product wasn't property, it was belief. Belief that the name Trump stood for luxury, for success, for winning. So he doubled down. He gave the press sweeping tours of his penthouse atop Trump Tower, a lavish triplex adorned in 24-karat gold, imported marble, and ornate French-inspired decor. The panoramic views of Central Park made it feel less like a residence and more like a private museum of affluence. And Donald knew exactly what he was doing. That was the turning point, when he shifted from real estate developer to public persona. An airline? Of course. He launched the Trump Shuttle, outfitting Boeing 727s to resemble executive boardrooms in the sky. Casinos? Naturally. Trump Plaza, Trump Castle, and the Trump Taj Mahal, his glittering $1.1 billion venture in Atlantic City, billed as the 8th wonder of the world. Even on the water, he made a statement. He bought a 282-foot monster from Adnan Khashoggi, yes, the Saudi arms dealer, and renamed it the Trump Princess. then docked it on the East River like it was just another business card. By the mid-1980s, Donald Trump had fully embraced the role of American tycoon. His life was a carefully orchestrated display of luxury. A gold-plated telephone, a personal helicopter emblazoned with his name, and a 126-room estate in Palm Beach called Mar-a-Lago, which he transformed into his own version of Versailles. Even his personal jet, a Boeing 727 with leather everything and a silk-lined bedroom, was proof that subtlety had been exiled long ago. But here's the thing. Beneath all that luxury, there were cracks. The illusion of unstoppable success came at a cost: mounting debt, risky bets, and smoke and mirror financing. And behind many of those moves was Fred Trump. While Donald sold himself as a self-made mogul who built an empire from a small loan of $1 million, the truth was way different. Fred didn't only give Donald seed money, he powered the dream. Millions in loans, guarantees, and real estate transfers are often masked through tax loopholes and shell companies. A later investigation by the New York Times estimated that Donald had received the modern equivalent of at least $413 million from his father over the years. But in the 80s? No one knew. No one cared. All they saw was the image. The Trump children enjoying European holidays, Ivana on the ski slopes of Aspen wrapped in furs, Donald presiding over charity galas. He looked like he'd cracked the code. By 1989, Donald Trump now a huge brand, a symbol of the era. Greed was good, and Donald made it look glamorous. But excess has gravity, and it always pulls harder than anyone expects. In 1989, the carefully curated image began to crack. Behind the scenes, Donald had been involved with Marla Maples, a former beauty queen, even as he maintained the appearance of a devoted husband. The affair became public in dramatic fashion, reportedly during a ski trip to Aspen, where Ivana and Marla encountered one another. The story captivated tabloids. The Trump marriage unraveled in full view, culminating in a divorce that was both high-profile and costly. Ivana allegedly told friends, "Don't get mad, get everything," and she nearly did. Behind the headlines, things were worse. The late 80s real estate bubble popped, and Donald's empire, built on loans and leveraged assets, started to wobble. Trump Plaza? Bleeding money? The airline? Grounded in debt. Even the so-called Eighth Wonder couldn't keep the lights on without massive financing. Bankruptcy loomed. Lenders grew nervous. Deals collapsed. And Donald, master of projection, kept posing on magazine covers like nothing was wrong. Because in Trump's world, the image was the empire. He wasn't just fighting to save a marriage or a portfolio. He was fighting to save the myth, the idea of Trump, the one who always won, the one with the jet, the tower, the model wife, the empire, the one who'd never be Freddie. And even as the world began to notice the cracks, Donald didn't flinch. He was certain a comeback was coming. He could feel it, and it did. But what no one expected, not even those closest to him, was just how far he'd go to get it. Buckle up, because we are about to see the father's sins catch up with his billionaire son. When Fred Trump Sr. died in 1999 at the age of 93, the Trump family gathered to bury their patriarch. Meanwhile, Donald Trump, Marianne, Robert, and Elizabeth stood to inherit the fortune. Freddie Jr.'s kids were given a token. Around $202,000 each. Not nothing. But compared to the tens of millions being divided among the surviving siblings, it was a loud and public message. You are not one of us. Fred Jr. died in 1981, a man broken by the weight of family expectations. 2 decades later, his children were dumbfounded to learn they'd been cut out of the will by 20% due to their father's death. To them, it wasn't a slight insult. It was a calculated erasure. In March 2000, they sued their aunts and uncles, claiming Fred Sr. had dementia and was manipulated into altering his will. The accusation? That Donald, Marianne, and Robert exploited their father's decline to seize the fortune. The response was swift and cold. Within days, the Trump siblings canceled the medical coverage for Fred III's infant son, William, who suffered from seizures and cerebral palsy. When asked why, Donald was blunt. Why should we give him medical coverage? This was the Trump doctrine in full view. Loyalty is currency. Challenge the empire, and the benefits disappear. But the headlines that followed were brutal, as you would expect. They were about a billionaire cutting off healthcare for a disabled baby during a family feud. Donald's team didn't flinch. They claimed the will reflected Fred Sr.'s true wishes, that Freddie's kids had lived comfortably, that they were outsiders, absentee grandchildren, as Marianne Trump Barry, Donald's older sister and a federal judge, put it. Fred Sr., she said, had no intention of treating them as one of his children. But the legal pressure worked. As the lawsuit gained traction and negative press mounted, the Trumps were forced to restore William's medical coverage, at least temporarily. A judge ordered it while the case dragged on. Behind closed doors, the two sides negotiated. Eventually, the lawsuit was settled, quietly and confidentially. The exact terms never came out. Mary and Fred III received additional compensation, but not the legacy they had hoped for. The lines were drawn, and the damage was done. Years later, Mary would strike back. In 2020, she released Too Much and Never Enough, a tell-all memoir that pulled no punches. It painted Donald as emotionally stunted, ruthlessly transactional, and shaped by a childhood of conditional love and cutthroat values. The book became a bestseller, a catharsis, a form of revenge 20 years in the making. But back in 2000, that reckoning was still years away. The inheritance war shattered the myth of Trump family unity. It revealed a clan where love came with conditions, and loyalty was a line item. And in the years that followed, that same code, insider privilege, brutal retaliation, image above all else, would move from the penthouse to Pennsylvania Avenue. Because Donald Trump didn't just inherit his father's money, he inherited his playbook. And in 2016, he took it with him to the White House, blurring the line between the national interest and the Trump family's interests. When Donald Trump took the oath of office in 2017, the presidency didn't just transfer to him. It was absorbed into the Trump brand. More than a political mission, his time in the White House became a continuation of the family enterprise, run with the same instincts that had built his real estate empire. Loyalty was the only credential that mattered, and if your last name was Trump, or you'd married into it, you were suddenly one of the most powerful people in Washington. Ivanka Trump became advisor to the president. Jared Kushner, her husband, got everything from Middle East peace to criminal justice reform. Neither had a day of government experience, but that didn't matter. In Trump's eyes, trust beat qualifications, and trust came through bloodlines. Meanwhile, Don Jr. and Eric took over the Trump organization, not divested, just in charge, while their father was president. But the line between government policy and personal profit blurred fast. Trump's D.C. hotel, just blocks from the White House, became a clubhouse for foreign diplomats, lobbyists, and GOP donors. Ivanka alone earned over $13 million from that property while holding an official White House role. And that wasn't all. Financial disclosures revealed Ivanka and Jared raked in over $640 million in outside income during Trump's presidency. Chinese trademarks for Ivanka's brand came through while she was meeting Chinese officials. Jared's investment firm received billions from foreign entities, some negotiated during official diplomatic trips. Critics screamed a conflict of interest. Trump shrugged. This was normal, he insisted. The Trumps weren't corrupt, they were competent, they were winners, and the government, like any company, should be run by people who know how to cut deals. Trump didn't see nepotism. He saw family loyalty, just like his father Fred had taught him. Inside the West Wing, Trump operated like a patriarch. He pitted aides and family members against one another, praised and punished at random, and kept everyone guessing who had his favor. Mary Trump, the estranged niece and clinical psychologist, watched it unfold and later wrote that her uncle had brought the Trump family pathology into the Oval Office. Image over substance, loyalty over truth, domination over empathy. By the time he left office, Trump had made one thing clear. The presidency was never separate from the Trump brand. It was a dynasty-building opportunity. Now, he's back. Despite the indictments, the backlash, and even the quiet distance taken by those closest to him, the momentum never really stopped. He became the first former US president indicted on criminal charges. And still, he pressed on. Even when Ivanka stepped back. Even when a family member puts their criticism into a book. At some point, it stops being just politics. It becomes something else, something more personal, more tangled. A legacy shaped by power, wealth, and an unrelenting desire to stay visible. Where it all goes from here, we don't know. But whatever happens, this story has already carved itself deep into history. And that's a wrap. If you found this story thought-provoking, subscribe for more. There's always another side to the headlines. See you in the next video.